Okay, thank you to everyone for attending the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Task Group Select Move 2021 on Thursday, 6th of January 2022. My name is Councillor Sarah Ainsworth and I am Vice Chair of this task group, chairing the meeting in place of Councillor June Molyneux. Please note this is a hybrid meeting being live streamed on YouTube with members both in the Council Chamber and on Microsoft Teams. Members in the Chamber, when you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on. Please turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. If you are joining in the meeting via Teams, please use the raise hand function on your iPad to indicate you wish to speak. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can everyone ensure that their phones are turned to silent. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. So, first on the agenda, is there any apologies for absence?
I received no apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, agenda item number 1, minutes of the meeting, 32nd December 2021. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of the minutes?
Happy to move those as a correct record, Chair.
Okay, got a seconder?
Me too.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the minutes be approved. Are we all in favour of this proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any peculiar interest in respect of the matters contained in this agenda. Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they need to declare? No. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 3, pages 7 to 10 in your agenda. At the early stage of re-evaluating Select Move, building upon the work completed in 2014, I wish to invite any member present to offer their views, opinions and their experiences of Select Move as part of their role as a councillor. So I'll open the floor to members. Anybody? Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Holgate, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, over the immediate past, I cannot say that I've had a lot of contact from residents having concerns about Select Move, but over the years, there have been, and there always will be, degrees of dissatisfaction. I think it's important, given the length of time it has been since we reviewed the Select Move process, it's important that we do so now, and I think that's as much of a reason to do it as any specific complaints or concerns that we're receiving from constituents. If you want me to talk about where I think we ought to try and create some kind of system to go about checking out how Select Move is still fit for purpose or not compared to how it was first set up, then I have some ideas which I can share with the group later, if you like.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll bring somebody else and then we'll come back to that if that's okay, Councillor Holgate. Councillor Berry, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I just want to raise the question of accessibility with Select Move, in that, you know, who do we cater for, and are some people not even getting their first step on any rung of the ladder, really, particularly residents that have mental health needs and other hard to reach groups, really, just that it's not there for them because possibly we are lacking the ability to provide suitable housing that is allowing people to be as independent as they possibly can and allowing them to live somewhere safe. So that's my number one concern. I think there's been, at one time, we could rely on housing associations to have provision, particularly for people with mental health needs, but there's not been any investment specifically for probably 10 to 15 years. And it needs examining and needs addressing. And I would also like to think that we could do some work to improve how we contact, people can't go online necessarily, midnight on a Friday night to access Select Move, particularly if they're in a vulnerable situation like they're homeless. And I think there's an expectation they have to access the service early in the morning. That's not necessarily ideal. And obviously, what happens at weekends when people are in crisis? And I know that's not necessarily the purpose of Select Move, but in some ways it should be, because we need to get these people on board and looked after. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Molyneux.
Thanks, Chair. I think the echo is for us who are online. When Julia was speaking, it was fine then, but it's very echoey. Right, my comments. I agree with Julia about access. It is very difficult for people who aren't computer savvy to use the system. The issue of houses not appearing on the system is a great concern to many people. They know the houses are empty or coming vacant, but they don't appear on the system, and people move in. And they're asking lots of questions about that. And I think the banking system is not always clear. Those are the concerns really that we come across in the village. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks very much. Following on from what Julia said and June said, it's about access to Select Move, and it goes down into a little bit more basic, in that there's a resident in my area who is 52 years old, who is registered disabled, who lives in Unswolton, which is about 2 miles from Eccleston. She has a job in Eccleston as a assistant at the local primary school. And because of her age, she's not allowed even to get onto the bidding process. Now, she's registered disabled. She lives in a 1-bedroom flat up of a steep flight of stairs, and she has to try and get down to Eccleston to earn her living, and all her family live in Eccleston. But because of her age, 52, and the minimum age is 55, she can't even make a bid. Now, there are no facilities in Unswolton, but even if there were, they wouldn't be any good because her place of work is in Eccleston. So what I'm really after with Select Move, it's a basic thing, is to have some special circumstances and organisation so that should this lady find a place in Eccleston, there are plenty of suitable accommodations in Eccleston she could just about walk to, but at the moment she's denied it. So it's basically changing the rules, the groundwork rules for Select Move, so that she can get started. I've tried to assist her with it, but when I've tried to do that, I hit a brick wall because she's 52 and the minimum age is 55. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holgate, just to come back on what you was going to suggest.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Listening to what Councillor Whitaker's just said, it occurs to me that perhaps we do need to focus on the allocation system. It's seems to be that it's failing in some regards, and maybe in that case it's a systemic failing, not dealing with and making taking account of a particular set of circumstances such as the one that he's just described. So maybe a review of the system being used and the allocation methods and the weighting that is given to different people's circumstances needs to be a place in which we can start to investigate how we can recommend or make recommendations to select move operators and those people who are within the system, or those service providers, those housing providers that are part of the system, and make some suggestions in that regard, so that it captures those people who Councillor Whitaker's described, just one of them. I dare say there are others with different circumstances that are also being disenfranchised to an extent. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Snape.
Thanks. I just had 4 points similar to what I raised last time, really. I think number one, from casework we've had in Adlington around the quotas issue, again, I'm a bit like a stuck record with it, but I believe it was 10% and it's now gone to 25%, so that's a lot of properties, a minimum of 75 properties, 75% of properties having to be advertised on select moves, so that means 25% aren't, possibly more. I just think that needs reviewing, and I know we can't have, you know, if we think one way, it doesn't necessarily mean the whole select move partnership would agree, but I think we've got to at least try and change that. The second point I wanted to raise was about people being rebanded to a lower band without any contact with them. Again, we've had issues in Adlington with, and I know the council has resolved them since, but where people have been on quite a high banding, and then because they've not bid for a while, because they've wanted to stay in the particular village that they've grown up in, they've then automatically been rebanded to a lower band by, I don't think it was by the council, it was by a housing provider. But again, there needs to be a consistent policy with that, because I don't think that's been adhered to, and I just think that's wrong. The third point was about the lack of the local connection policy, because I know it's a big issue for some people in Chorley about whether or not people are moving into properties that actually have a connection to Chorley Borough. And I know I did raise some concerns at the last meeting. I think it was noted in Rachel's and Jennifer's report that they hadn't actually the council hadn't run the report to see statistically whether or not we do have an issue with people coming from further afield and not having a connection to Chorley. And I know that has been raised dozens of times over the last few years, so that does bother me massively. And the last point I wanted to raise, I think similar to Julia's as well, was about the lack of support for people that aren't digitally tuned in and aren't online. Again, I think when I sat on the task group that Graham Dunn chaired a few years ago in 2014, and since then I was always told as a councillor that about this booklet that they can send out to people once a week for those that don't have access to the internet. Again, we have had issues in a couple of cases this year where that hasn't been the case, and we've had to escalate that. So whether or not that's been done consistently, I don't know, but there are 4 points to chuck into the mix anyway. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to bring Matthew in. Just got a comment from the council accounts on the Teams.
Okay, due to technical issues, apparently there's an echo on our Teams call, but Councillor Khan has said the current system for select move is not a fair system and needs to be more equal and accessible. It needs to be simplified and able to understand. The band system needs to be more coordinated approach, and the allocations need to be fairer for those on waiting lists more than 2 years.
Thanks, Matthew. Councillor Marner.
Thanks, Chair. The thing I think we need to ask the relevant people at South Ribble and Preston for their views on select move, to see if they're coming up with the same issue. I would imagine they are, but I don't know. But I think we need to speak to them with some urgency. And that is a step, next step that we need to take. Thank you.
I do agree with what I think we need to work with other councils and just see what their take is on this. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Barry?
Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned. Meeting last month. We do need to hear people's voices that people we're talking about are having difficulties with Select Move.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but I can't hear what Councillor Berry's saying. Her microphone's not working or something.
I was just going to say the same. Councillor Hofford.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's hope this is clearer. Yeah. What concerns me is we do need to look at who we're going to call as witnesses, really, because obviously councillors have experience from casework, which I'm very aware that there are a lot of single voices out there rather than the groups that we used to have before COVID. Particularly, like I say, if I go back to what I was saying about mental health services don't exist as they used to exist. There's no day services and people aren't meeting. But I am aware anecdotally there are a lot of vulnerable, isolated people who want to have these safe places to reside and have a future. I'd also like to see the feedback from the housing needs survey that we did. It would also back up these concerns about hard to reach groups that are not being supported.
Does anybody else wish to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, obviously the amount of social housing or affordable housing available is an issue and will have an effect on the aspirations of people who are using Select Move. So I think we need to check to see what sort of shortages we're having to manage whilst making allocations, just to contextualize it, because if there's just simply too few houses to a significant degree, then we don't want to be chasing around looking for systemic failings when the failing is simply the fact that we don't have enough properties on the market. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to pass back over to Matthew.
And Councillor Khan came back and said emails to the housing options team need to be replied to within 7 days, and should also like to request that if we could ask a few people who have been on the waiting list for over 2 years or have been banded high and cannot understand why they then fall behind on the list to attend the task group meeting to speak to the committee. And there are many service users in East Chorley who would be happy to attend.
Thank you. Any more comments from the floor? Anybody else on Teams? Okay, so if there's any member who has any additional views that they'd like to be submitted to the task group following the meeting, contact Matthew from Democratic Services. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 4, review of scope. This is pages 7 to 10 on the agenda. Well, the scope of document is attached to the agenda and it will be used to lead our investigation. Does any member have any comments, views or alterations to be made to, so we'll start with the objectives. Is everybody okay with the objectives? Does anybody want to add anything? Okay. Next one is the desired outcomes. Is everybody happy with that? Does anybody want to add anything? Councillor Snape?
Just ask about the desired outcomes. I just wondered whether or not we could add consistent into, because it says that it is accessible, transparent and easy to understand for all users. Just wondering whether we could add like consistent to that, because some of the issues that we're picking up in Adlington is that it is part of the policies already, but that it's not being applied consistently. Though it's sort of written in stone that it should be done. Thanks.
Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm sorry, I haven't got the paperwork that you're referring to, but the desired outcomes, I assume, is what we want and how we want to select move to develop. And without repeating myself, I hope that there will be something in there that will adjust the age limit subject to certain circumstances, that will allow people who are in desperate need for accommodation to be accommodated and not simply ruled out because they're not old enough. If that's possible to put into scope, the desired outcomes, I would be grateful. Thank you, Chair.
As in terms of reference, does anybody wish to add anything? No. Equality and diversity inclusions. No. Racism issue. And information. There's a few pages on there. Or any comments on that? Yeah, Councillor.
Sorry, just equality and diversity implications. Should what Alan's point not be added to there about age? Yeah. Yeah. All right, brilliant. Thanks.
Yeah, comments? Is everybody happy with the current contents of the task group scope? Okay, so that's accepted. So looking ahead to the next meeting, we're aiming to invite Select Move partners to the committee prior to invitations being sent out. What would members like to hear specifically addressed from the partners of Select Move? In addition to what's already been said, yeah. Anybody wish to add anything? Nope. Okay, so date of the next meeting will take place on Tuesday. Oh, sorry. Councillor Moore, no.
Can I just ask, can we contact the MP's office to see if they're having any issues with Select Move for our resident?
Yeah, that's
Because he probably provide a written report. So.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, no problem. Anybody else wish to query or add anything else? No. Okay. So the date of the next meeting will be 15th of February 2022 at 6:30. There is no urgent items, and I now declare